Welcome to the Attic. ManaDad here. It's the channel where we explore what's fun in Magic, mostly on Arena, coming to Arena through the Omenpaths. Not Spider-Man. We're going to talk about that. It's called Through the Omenpaths, and that's how we're going to keep it, because that is what it is on Arena. We're going to break down the cards, the archetypes, all kinds of stuff. So here is what you can expect in this video, the limited strategy overview. First of all, which spider is which? We'll talk a little bit about the correspondences with SPM versus OM1. If you don't know what that means, stick around. The release dates, when can you play these cards? The 4-player pick 2 draft format, which is a new officially supported draft format from Wizards. What does that mean? Mana bases and fixing. What can you build color-wise in this set? What are the official archetypes? The 2 color pairs, and in this case there's only 5 of them. We're going to talk about that. And there's also actually quite a number of hidden archetypes that I've identified, ones that Wizard is not listing, but based on my studying of the card file, ones that you can play. We'll talk about the Toughness Breaks, what creatures have nice round big butts that are good to play, and what removals can remove them. And we'll also break down just the final takeaways. This is the set with Fleam. All you Fleam heads, stick around, because here we go with Through the Omenpaths. All right, so which spider is which? Well, this set is only 188 cards. Usually there's 200 and some cards or more in a set, in a mainline set. It was going to be probably straight to Commander or something set, and then they had to expand it at the last minute. And also they didn't secure the rights, whether they didn't want to or couldn't secure the rights for Marvel to make everything Spider-Man. So there are Spider-Man versions of all of these cards, but we're keeping it with the Through the Omenpaths version, and officially this is called OM1. Anytime you're playing these cards online, it's going to be the OM1 versions. Anytime you're playing in paper, it's going to be the SPM versions. You cannot get these cards in paper as of now, although many of them are kind of cool. If you're a Magic fan, you might want to have the Magic versions in paper, and hopefully they will listen to that. Now you're thinking, okay, I get some cool list, but then I want to play it at my local F&M, or I want to take something that some streamer talked about and they listed with the Spider-Man cards and play it on Arena. Well, apparently, according to Watsy J on Reddit, I pulled out this comment. We solved this for them and all of you. Importing a deck with card names from SPM, that's the Spider-Man version, will auto-swap them to the OM1, that's the Through the Omenpaths, names, and pull in those cards, and you can search for SPM card names in the Arena deck builder, and it will pull up the OM1 cards. But again, for this video, I'm not doing 2 names. We're just going to stick with the 1 names. If that's what you're interested in, stick around. If not, I'm sure there's other content creators who've broken this whole set down with the Spider-Man names, and you can go find them, and no hard feelings. But I'm a dad with no brain, so okay, we've lost the background here. But here's the release dates. We don't need a background. We got the beta testing on MTGO, apparently started around September 10th. I think the MTGO release is September 22nd, based on what I saw online. I didn't really see a super official date, but there was some, tweet or skeet that said September 22nd, so that's where I'm pulling that. But the main things you want to keep in mind: paper pre-release starts September 19th, goes through the 25th, but I think it'd be 19th, 20th, 21st for your Friday through Sunday playing of the set. And then on Arena, it comes out on the 23rd, so just the next day after most of the paper pre-release events. But when you can officially play it in paper at your F&M and stuff is on September 26th. Pick 2 draft. So this has been quite controversial, I would say. On Arena, there's going to be a regular draft. So you'll be able to draft this with a regular 8-person pod picking 1. There's also going to be pick 2 drafts. There's a bit of wrangling on Reddit about whether the prizes are worse or about equal for the pick 2 drafts. It seems like at least they're marginally worse. Some people are claiming the math works out to be much worse because you can only get 2 losses. And I think even though maybe if you kind of balance out the prize scales, it seems more or less in line. I think because 2 losses versus 3 is a really big difference, and it will really increase variance. There's going to be a lot of feel bad. So by all means, try out the 4-player pick 2, but just know that going in that the prize awards are going to be a bit worse. Now, in terms of how that plays out, there was a test, midweek event with Foundations Draft that I tested out with the pick 2. It's fine. I think it's actually probably going to work better with this set. There's just so many, there's so few cards in the set and so many legendaries, which kind of gives you a feel bad when you have one in your hand and the one's already in play. Some of them have, like, you know, they can do a thing from the graveyard, or you can Enweb and bounce something back or what have you. But so there's a little bit in the design to kind of glance at that, but it's still going to be, I'm guessing, quite thick on the ground with legends, and you're going to really have to watch out for legend ruling yourself. I still think you would probably play most legends, multiple copies in a deck. Would you play beyond 2 copies? I think that will remain to be seen, but you're also like you're gonna see fewer cards either way, because there's just gonna be more repeats at common and uncommon. Especially, you're gonna see those cards all the time. There's not gonna be as much of a chance to change lanes, and it's not gonna be as easy to read signals, because especially with pick 2, there's 2 cards coming out of the pack each time. So, you know, by the time it circles back around, you've lost 8 cards just like usual, and you just have to try to guess. Most packs on Arena are balanced in terms of at least the commons. There should be at least, I think, 1 common of each color at the very least. I could be wrong about that, in 1 land. So there will be an ability to read some signals, but it's going to be limited, and if you get yourself into a corner, you're going to have some bad drafts. So I think it's just going to be a lot more on rails, this format. Probably won't have the same depth or replayability, because most decks are going to be kind of similar, because you just have the same cards to build them with. That being said, I do think there are some Buildarounds. We'll talk about that when we get into the archetype section. And yeah, so Arena's having both pick 2 and regular pick 1 drafts, apparently. That's the word. And so you can play whatever you want. You can try both, test them out, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Here's the draft archetypes. I've converted it over to Ademi of the Silk Shoots. Blue-white modified, or white-blue modified. Modified is counters, equipment, auras that you control on a creature that you control. That creature is considered modified, and there are payoffs for doing that beyond just, you know, giving your creatures a buff. Villains connive. There are payoffs for both having a number of villains and for conniving. And connive is the mechanic where you discard and you get a +1/+1 counter if you discard it non-land, and you draw a card. And I don't know. There's obviously the modified payoffs in blue for that. There's the discard payoffs with Mayhem, which we'll talk about next. So that's blue-black. Just 5 of these draft archetypes. It's what you would kind of consider a guild set. Black-red, Rakdos Mayhem. This is a new twist on Madness. The timing restrictions apply. You don't have to immediately play them from the do you have to immediately play them? I've forgotten now. But anyways, you discard the card, then you can play it from your graveyard. I think just that turn. I think it's within the turn. So that way you can play, if it's a sorcery, you just play it at sorcery speed or what have you, after you connive. So that's Mayhem. Some cards have Mayhem costs. Some cards give Mayhem to your stuff. Red-green, very straightforward, kind of a bit of a nebulous one. We'll talk about that. Large spells, want to cast spells with mana value 4 or greater, and play some beefy creatures. And then green-white web slinging. It's actually called Enweb in the Omenpaths version. I guess that felt like web slinging was too Spider-Man trademarky. But it's ETB benefits and getting value out of your creatures. We'll discuss that shortly, but before we get into the sort of card skeletons for each archetype, let's talk about the mana bases in the set. And we do have quite a complement of lands. There's Vibrant Cityscape, which is essentially your Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, just complete copy, clone. There's Fearsome Ridgeline at uncommon, which will fix you badly. Obviously, paying 2 mana for a mana of any color is pretty bad. Does have a nice benefit with legendaries, giving them menace, but you can only do it as a sorcery. Multiversal Passage at rare. This is probably more of a constructed card, but you do get a chance to choose a basic land type, and then it's essentially a shock land for that basic land type. Will that be good? Well, there are some 3-color hidden archetypes. Maybe you can guess from Urban Retreat. I'm guessing that over the course of the Marvel sets, we'll be getting more of these tri-lands. Urban Retreat is the Bant, meaning green, white, and blue. Then it has 2, return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. Put this card from your hand onto the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. And then exclusive Nightclub is the Grixis, which means blue, black, and red in Magic slang. And when this land enters from a graveyard, you lose 2 lives, but I guess you can Mayhem it. So if you discard it, you can put it into play. Again, I think restrictions apply, so you're not actually ramping, but you are getting card advantage by having the free land, but you are losing 2 life. So I think they've maybe costed this rather cautiously. We'll see. Certainly for limited, maybe not for constructed. And then there is a cycle of the 5 guilds, I guess, the 5 2-color pairs of these lands and are tapped. And in this case, you pay 4, tap them, and surveil 1, which surveil is pretty useful in this format. I do think these are going to be pretty decent. You probably at least want 1 in any of your given standard 2-color decks. In terms of fixing from other cards, you have the standard 2-drop, 2-1. In this case, it's a Reach Spider Scout. When it enters, you may search your library for a basic land, shuffle it, put it on top. There's a Treat Trolley at 3 mana. Enters, it makes a food. It is not itself the food. And then taps to add mana of any color. There's the Vine Woven Chariot, it's 2-drop, but you're going to probably want to have green when you play it. So you can play it as a 3-drop, and then you get to search your library, reveal it, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put into your hand, womp womp, and shuffle. So that it's a 3/1 vehicle with crew 2. Reality Fulcrum. When this artifact enters, exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards, and then it taps to add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast spells from exile. And there are decks that can do that decently, but I don't know. It's a rare. I don't know if it's going to be a high pick. I'm guessing not. Certainly, again, costed to not probably cause too much trouble in constructed formats. Laszlo, Enthusiastic Accuser. I mean, it doesn't come into play tapped. Laszlo is a 2/2 for 3 mana, and comes in, you get to suspect something, and whenever a creature you control with menace attacks, you create a treasure token. So treasure tokens, as long as you have that creature, and if you play Laszlo on 3, there's a chance your opponent only has 1 creature to block, so you're going to get in with the creature that you suspected and get that treasure token and start the mana fixing / ramp with Laszlo. And leave a comment if you know what Spider-Man character Laszlo corresponds to. You might even be able to tell just from that pose. On the card, At 3 mana, we got Ruzik, Booed but Victorious. This is a goblin villain. That's a 5/4 with Mayhem of 3, which is 2 and a Rakdos hybrid. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you do have to discard a card, but then you make a treasure each turn. So, card disadvantage. This is a rare. I think most of the time, depending on the board state, you might just want to be smacking in with a 5/4 and ramping yourself. And we know black-red is the Mayhem colors, so if you are in black-red with a lot of Mayhem in your deck, this might not be a disadvantage to discard a card every turn. We got Favored Fighter. It is 4 mana, but it enters and makes a treasure token when it comes in. So there's that as a sort of late-game mana-fixing option. A little less late-game, Supportive Parents is a 3 mana 3/3, and you can tap 2 untapped creatures you control, which would include the parents. So you play this on 3, and if you've got another creature by that time, which you probably do, there's a decent amount of 1 and 2 drops, then you get to tap for a color, and it's an option. Then at 5 mana, although it Enwebs for 3 mana, and we'll talk more about what Enweb is, but basically, if you return a tapped creature to your hand, you can pay the Enweb cost. Then, that's part of the cost of Enweb is returning a tapped creature you control to your hand. You get to search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tap, and then shuffle. So that's Zan Tunnelweb Explorer. So, Enweb. I put this up top because I think this is sort of the weirdest of the new mechanics. Let's look at the signpost first of all. We've got at rare a 3/5 called Eleni Brood Recruiter, legendary spider human hero, and webs for 1 a green and a white. Otherwise, it's 2 a green and a white. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you make a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. And for 5 mana, creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain vigilance until end of turn. Very solid rare. The Enweb is not really getting you that much. I think you want to make sure you are bouncing back a small creature and getting that, token. Maybe wait until turn 5 or till you have 5 mana to do that is a possibility. At uncommon, there is Alessos and Pros, Acrobats, legendary spider human heroes, and they Enweb for the same amount, 1 a green and a white, as opposed to casting for 3 a green and a white. And whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains flying until end of turn. And the question is, with so many spiders, is flying going to be good? Is there enough reach in this set? That flying is not the usual advantage that it is, and we'll kind of answer that as we go along. But you can keep that question in the back of your mind. So there's that. And if you drop right down below, there's also Janai and Hoppy Roof Skippers for a green and a white. And that's a 2/2. It has flying during your turn, and when Janai and Hoppy leaves the battlefield, you make a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. So there's your, target for what you want to Enweb and bounce back, right? You fly in, you hit for 2, it's tapped, and then you bounce it back with Alessos or Eleni on turn 3 and get those, cheat those into play a little bit sooner, and then you have another creature that pays you off, and you're making more creatures and kind of going wide with tokens. So I would say Enweb is also, based on these kind of signpost cards, a bit more of a go wide tokens theme. I don't know how often you're actually going to want to Enweb because it is a big tempo hit to bounce your own creatures back to your hand. You have to kind of think about like ninjutsu or some other mechanics like that to think about how that would be. In terms of other creatures you want to bounce back to your hand, Gallant Citizen there. When it enters, you draw a card. It's a 2 mana 1/1 because it is hybrid or green-white with 2 of those, 2 hybrid pips. I would say it really only fits into this deck. Might be a little harder to get into other decks. We'll talk about, there's a hidden archetype it fits into, but we'll talk about that later. City Pigeon, I think, is going to be underrated at first. Just a 1/1 flyer. It's going to easily be tapped. It's going to make food tokens, which is nice. There's not a super payoff for the food tokens, but it's always just good. Incidental life gain, always good in limited. I'm going to come out in favor of that. Speaking of which, we have the Clutter Cluster, which we can pay for 2 mana. It's a 2/3, not reach, even though it's depicting a spider. And when it enters, if it was cast using Enweb, you gain 3 life and create 2/1 green spider creature tokens with reach. And you say, that sounds pretty good because Enweb's usually lower. Well, not on the Clutter Cluster. On the Clutter Cluster, Enweb is 4 a green and a green. So it's really like a 6-drop, but that's pretty good. This is going to be the deck that's going to be able to bounce it back and replay it on turn 6 and get that value. So depending on what you're trying to do, you do get the spiders with reach eventually. Usually Army in a Can type cards are pretty good. I'm keeping an eye on Clutter Cluster. Zan Tunnel Web Explorer is 4 and a green. We just talked about that guy, 4/3. Ramp yourself. Sarn of the Silken Throne, 3 and a white, 3/4, and Webs for 2 and a white. At the beginning of your end step, if 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield under your control this turn, you draw a card and you gain 2 life. So payoff for those turns where you can bounce that pigeon. You got the 1 extra white mana, bounce that pigeon and replay it. Also payoff for the cards that are making you the extra citizen tokens, right? You're going to have 2 or more creatures enter on those turns. At rare, another rare to watch out for with these colors. It's obviously good in any deck in this format, but particularly good in this one, Demara Soul of a Spider, whenever a spider you control enters, right? So you're potentially making spider tokens, you're potentially bouncing spiders and replaying spiders. So they have, I think, tried to balance it out a little bit with this color pair by making some of these things not spiders, like the Gallant Citizen and the City Pigeon. And the Opulent Valet, which is 3 mana 1/1 flyer that enters and makes a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. And then we got Vinewoven Chariot, which we'd already talked about in the mana fixing. When it enters, you may pay a green. If you do, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Is this going to be the splashing color? I would think actually based on what we saw in the fixing section, and I can jump back to that. I think it would actually be red and green if you're looking at this, right? Red and green is going to, with the treasure tokens in red, that's going to be more likely to be your fixing. Moving along to Mayhem. And we got Desecrex Gift of Servitude, 2 a black and a red, 4/3 trample. When it enters, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains this creature attacks each combat if able, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it. And this has Mayhem for black and a red. This is kind of been a standard card design lately where it's, bring back a thing that gets 1 hit. Again, you probably, if you're building around this, you want ETBs or something. But, getting a 4/3, if you can pull off the Mayhem on turn 2 and get this 4/3 out, 4/3 trample on turn 2, that seems pretty good to me. We talked about Ruzik already, mix a treasure token. So it's 1, a Rakdos Hybrid, or Mayhem for 2 Rakdos Hybrid. So just a slightly easier to cast with Mayhem. And you get a 5/4, and you get a discard enabler. That's also at rare. Now, at uncommon, Kivni Orb Weaver is a 2/1 Menache, and for a black and a red. When it enters, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on him. It's interesting they kept the pronouns from the Spider-Man set. I guess they didn't want to change as much of the text as just the web slinging. That's the only thing they wanted to change. And obviously the names automatically change. So Mayhem for a Rakdos Hybrid. It's either black or red. 2/1 Menace for 2. Seems pretty good. You're going to want to have decent mana base to be able to hit that. And it does give you, if you draw it later, the discard a card payoff. So you'll be able to do your Mayhem thing, even if you play it off curve. I'm not sure how good a 2/1 Menace is. We'll kind of talk about the toughness breaks here. I'm not super high on Kivni Orb Weaver, just based on what I've seen of the set, not having played it yet at this point as I record this. Crash, Reckless Endwriter for 2 and a Reckless Hybrid is a legendary mutant villain. 2/3 is the stats. And at the beginning of your first main phase, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, Crash deals 1 damage to that player. So, pretty solid 3-drop. Discard enabler if you need one. There's going to be a bunch of them. We're going to go through more of them. But there you go. There's Crash. Skittering Kitten. 1 red drop. Haste. And it has discard a card, sacrifice this creature, draw a card. So, when it's outlived its usefulness, you get a 1-time discard draw, and that can help you get your Mayhem paid off. Can help you, play Kivney Orb Weaver or whatever for very cheap. A Romantic Rendezvous is the kind of standard at this point. Discard a card, draw 2. In this case, it's sorcery speed, but there are payoffs for discarding a card, so this actually might be a little higher than it is in most sets, especially in this color pair. Rare that might pull you into this color pair here is Stitcher's Wings. It's just 3 colorless for an artifact equipment. When it enters, if it was cast from your graveyard, attach it to target creature you control. And how are you going to cast it from the graveyard? You say, well, it has Mayhem for 2. And the equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has flying and Hasta. Speaking of haste, for 4 and a red, you have Lavaborn Goblins. You get a 5/4 haste with Mayhem, 2 and a red. So, again, that's pretty good to get in a 5/4 hasty body for 2 and a red. I kind of like that better than Crash. I don't know. Quint's Insight, 1 and a red, also a rare here. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your first main phase, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, this enchantment deals 1 damage to each opponent. That obviously is a combo piece for Constructed, but I think you could also play it in this deck if you just need ways to discard to trigger your Mayhem. For something like Wekdu, Midnight Hunter, legendary creature, insect villain, 2/2 flash, flying Mayhem for a black. And note, because timing restrictions apply on Mayhem, this is more of the Madness style play card here. If you can instant speed discard for whatever reason, then you can play this just for a black mana. You can even use it to ambush a 1/1. Just like good old time Spiral times. Kaldaya Brawlers for 3 and a black, 3/4. Also free discard outlet. Discard a card. This creature gets +1/+0, gains menace until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery, so you're not going to do it as a combat trick, but probably don't want to combat trick if you're going to use it to trigger Mayhem. Prison Break for 4 and a black. This is the Reanimator spell. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter. +1/+1 counters will matter for the modified payoffs, and you might end up with some modified stuff in your deck if you're crossing colors. So there you go. Mayhem for the cost of a Zombify. And the Reanimator thing, this Reanimator could actually be a deck. I should have put that in the hidden archetype. But based on Prison Break and Mayhem and the amount of discard outlets you've got, you should be able to reanimate some big, beefy, fun, splashy Spider Legends. We'll get to more of those Spider Legends momentarily. But first, let's talk about Blue-Black Villains Connive. Blue-Black is what we call Dimir in Magic slang, if you don't know. Niche Pinnacle Pariah for 5, a blue, and a black at Mythic. It's a 4/8. Other villains you control get +2/+2. Your maximum hand size is 8. At the beginning of your end step, if you have fewer than 8 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. So, for some reason, they didn't want to make it cost 8 mana. I don't know. I guess it's this Niche is a Pinnacle Pariah. He's not a doctor nor an octopus. Yeah, this is one you probably want to reanimate. Giving all your villains +2/+2 is not terrible. And it's more about redrawing all the cards If you have a deck that can slow the game down enough, I think this would actually be a pretty strong card. Niche Pinnacle Pariah. Not as, other than the villain's payoff, not super playing into the villain's connive. I view this more as a small evasive creatures deck, you know, with some removal interaction. At rare, you have Kavero, Mindbitten for 2, a blue and a black. Legendary creature, spider, human hero. It's a 4/4. And you may have Kavero enter as a copy of any creature in a graveyard, except his name is Kavero, Mindbitten, and he's a 4/4 spider human hero, in addition to his other types. And if you do, you got to exile that card. There was an old Ravnica card that was kind of like this, but you had to pay 3 mana to exile something and clone something. But in any case, that's Kavero. Usually these clone effects are not that great. On the other hand, the fail case on this is just a 4 mana 4/4. And it's any graveyard, so you can exile something from your opponent's graveyard. It's still going to be a 4/4. So I think it's pretty decent. I don't know if it's like the best rare, but there you go. We also have 2 uncommon signposts here. We got Carlo, Suave Schemer as a 2/3 menace, and whenever another villain you control enters, Carlo connives. So Carlo should be pretty solid because pretty much everything in these colors is a villain. First we're going to go Turl and Tropic Hunger for 2, a blue and a black. That's a 3/1 flying vigilance lifelink. And if it ends up in your graveyard, you can pay a blue and a black, exile it, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I think decks will be happy to have this. Just because it's 4 mana, I don't know how many copies you're going to want. Is also a bit low on toughness, but there are ways to cause your creatures to connive, as we'll get into. For example, Mob Lookout for 1 and a Dimir hybrid. That's a blue and a black hybrid. Creature Human Rogue Villain. When this creature enters, target creature you control connives. And it is a 0/3. So most often a discard trigger plus a 0/4 might really be better in the black-red decks, but there you go. Certainly not too bad if you're putting a counter on Turl and getting extra lifelink. Rishi Getaway Accomplice, not Gateway. I'm fueled up for this, guys. I should be speaking better. Rishi Getaway Accomplice, 5 and a Dimir hybrid, so yet another hybrid one. That gets you a 4/6 flying. When it attacks other villains you control, gain flying until end of turn. So, not a bad curve topper. I remember when a 4/6 flying vanilla Mahamaya Jin was quite good. Data Scrubber is 3 for a 2/1 robot. It's just 3 colorless. For a 2/1, or 3 generic, I should say. For a 2/1 artifact creature, human, robot, villain. When this creature enters, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. Target creature you control connive. So again, another way to connive your creatures that are already out there, which is nice because then they'll be bigger for an attack. It's always good to put the extra power on a creature that's already out there. Fail case, it lands on this. You're going to eat something from opponent's graveyard. As we've seen, there's stuff like Turl that has some graveyard value. The next one, Arala, Hedron Scaler for 3 and a blue, also has graveyard value. That's a 3/3 flyer, and once in your graveyard, you can pay 1 and a blue, exile it from your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains flying until end of turn. So again, not a bad finisher. You trade off with your 3/3, and then later in the game, you get a big something on the ground, and you loft it into the air and get that last couple damage. Unstable Experiment is an instant for 1 and a blue. Target player draws a card that up to 1 target creature you control connives. Again, another way to create the conniving on your stuff. Obviously, the best connives are the repeatable connives, like the ones you get from Carlo or from like Ledger Shredder, to use an example of a card that is not in this set. I guess I should have mentioned there is a bonus sheet, but each card on the bonus sheet is like so super uber rare that it's like almost impossible to plan around it. But you are invited to go check out the bonus sheet. It's definitely going to cause waves in other formats on Arena. You know, Opposition Agent is on there, so that's getting added to Arena, stuff like that. Anyways, back to blue-black villains Connive. Vexed bots for 1 and a blue. 1/1 flying. Whenever another villain you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. This ability triggers only once each turn. Is there a piece of magic text that deflates a card more? It's still good, right? I mean, you're going to get lots of villains in the set. This is just a 2-mana flyer that grows and grows. Is itself a villain for triggering villain things. The +1/+1 counters will matter for modified synergies in blue. Watcher on the Road is another 4-mana 3/3. In this case, it is a rare. And when it enters, you make a 3/3 blue illusion villain creature token for each non-token villain you control. Exile those tokens when the Watcher on the Road leaves the battlefield. So, I mean, this one is going to be a fantastic finisher. Basically, a removal check, right? If your opponent has removal, it's going to be a total feel bad. And if they don't, you're going to have out of board of, I don't know, you're just like 2 or 3 villains. A 3/3 that comes with 2 other 3/3s seems pretty good. At uncommon, we've got Scorvus Ames, Crime Lord, a 3 and a black legendary creature, Scorpion human villain, I think it says. 3/3 Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, target creature you control connives. And again, just another way to make your boys connive. So, we talked about blue-white modified Azorius in Magic Parlance. The signpost rare here is Angler's Shield. It's 2 a white and a blue for artifact equipment. When this equipment enters, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card for each modified creature you control. So this is going to be pretty hard to stop. Again, instant speed removal check. I mean, just wait till your opponent taps out. Play this on something they can't really block. There's plenty of flyers and stuff that's going to be hard to block. And then draw a bunch of cards. You're going to have at least one modified creature because equipment is itself a modification. Normally equipment and, vehicles and stuff are not that great, but possibly for modified, it's only 2 to equip. Possibly Angler's Shield is going to be quite strong. There's Serena Bargain Spinner. This is 3 and an Azorius hybrid. That's white-blue. Legendary creature, Spider Human Hero. During your turn, Serena Bargain Spinner has flying. And when it enters, you get to search for an aura or equipment, reveal it and put it to your hand, then shuffle. So I think you can see why I put that next to Angler's Shield. It's not quite a curve topper, but it's going to be, you search up the Angler's Shield with Serena, then you pop it on the next turn. You've got a 5/4 flyer that's going to draw you at least 1 card, potentially more if you've got other modified creatures, such as Kumanosu the Watchful for 3 a white and a blue, our legendary artifact creature Spider Hero, 4/4 Vigilance. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I really like a good tempo deck. So you can tell I'm a little bit in the tank for a blue-white modified here. Like your 2-drop here, Wanderweave Aerialist. It's a blue and a white hybrid, a blue and a white hybrid. So 2 mana total. Creature, Spider Human Hero, Ward 2, and it has flying as long as it's modified. And as we can see, it's not too hard to get modified. And then it's going to be up in the air and quite hard to deal with Ward 2. Perfected Pastry, you could play on turn 1 because it's just 1 generic. Artifact Food, for a white tap and sacrifice, you can put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature and draw a card. Otherwise, you can do the food thing and pay 2, tap, sacrifice it, gain 3 life. And you also draw a card when you do that. And we've seen these artifacts that cash in for cards and a small value be pretty decent in the last couple sets. So I would actually not sleep on Perfected Pastry, especially in the blue-white modified deck. Another way to put counters with an artifact is Costume Closet. It's for 1 and a white, just a plain old artifact, and enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. You can tap, move a +1/+1 counter from it onto a creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. And it has, whenever a modified creature you control leaves the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on this artifact. So you're going to get your +1/+1 counters back. It's not quite the Ozolith, but it's not that bad either. It's better than Weapons Rack, if you remember that one from all the way back in Throne of Eldraine. So, yeah, there's Costume Closet. Another easy way to get +1/+1 counters on your creatures. Also at rare, there's another hybrid card here. Mech D and Itla, Sky Snares for 1 and an Azorius hybrid. You get a 2/2 flyer, and artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter tapped. Now, if they are green-white, they might want stuff to enter tapped because then they can trigger their Enweb. But other than that, I think you still always play this. This kind of Root Maze effect is so good. Yeah, I'm slam dunking MacD and Itla, and because it is hybrid, it even goes in a number of decks. But I put it here because, you know, a 2/2 flyer is not a bad thing to put some counters on. Also in the 2-drop slot, you got Crime Scene Instructor for 1 and a white. It's a creature human detective at common. Enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's a 1/1, but it's really a 2/2. And when it leaves the battlefield, it's going to put its +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. So it's going to leave behind modification, makes it annoying for opponents to remove with single removal spells. Not that they're really super targeting removing a 2-drop anyway. A bear, if you will. But this will just be a good little filler card in this deck. Generous Betty Ray is a legendary creature human mercenary hero for 2 and a white. She's a 2/3, and when she enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature. So not Betty Ray. You're going to have a creature down. And whenever Betty Ray attacks, target modified creature you control gains lifelink until end of turn. And I think how good Betty Ray is will depend on how often you're turning on that lifelink. Small creatures with lifelink getting chip life gain damage is usually a surprisingly good win rate in limited. So again, don't sleep on generous Betty Ray. Diligent Web Keepers for 4 and a hybrid, Selesnya hybrid in this case. Now, why am I putting it in the Azorius? Why am I putting a green-white card in a blue-white deck? Well, you'll notice the ability of the Diligent Web Keepers, the Spider Hero 4/3, is when it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So for a Curve Topper, you play a bunch of these small creatures, including flyers, including that pigeon, whatever, comes down, giving +1/+1 counters to all of them. They're all modified now if they weren't before. This just seems kind of like a natural for this deck, maybe more so than the green-white. So keep an eye out for Diligent Web Keepers. At rare, 2-drop, we have a saga called A Most Helpful Weaver. Chapter 1, create a 2/1 green spider creature token with reach. Chapter 2, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It becomes a legendary spider hero in addition to its other types. And Chapter 3, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. So, great 2-drop. There's some ways to bounce things that are not in web or blink things. So, Most Helpful Weaver should be pretty good rare pickup. Now, I guess the reason I put it under this slide is because of that +1/+1 counter on Chapter 2. You're essentially guaranteed to have a modified creature. It's not guaranteed. They could remove the creature. They often will with these kind of sagas. Opponent is really highly incentivized to use their removals. Chapter 2, as you're putting the counter on it, or before you put the counter on it, if you have no other creatures. The last one here, another 2-drop, Lurking Lizards for 1 and a green, creature lizard villain. It's a 1/3 trample. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So it's very self-modifying. Is it better in the green-red shell? Possibly. I don't know how often you're going to be triggering it here. You probably just play your normal curve. And, you know, if you end up with a 2-mana 2/4 trample or 3/5 trample, you're not feeling too bad. And obviously, just a small body with trample is going to wear equipment, counters, auras, etc. quite well. So Lurking Lizards, because it is green though. So we'll kind of talk about, I guess, the Bant modified deck. That's a little preview of that hidden archetype there. Green red large spell. Speaking of, Boris the Spider is our sort of rare signpost. It's a 4/3 and for 1 a red and a green, and webs for a red and a green. It has trample, and if it was cast using Enweb, enters with X +1/+1 counters, where X is the mana value of the returned creature. So, I mean, you'll be happy if it's just even a 1-drop. As long as you're not returning an Ornithopter, you're going to be... I mean, even if you are returning an Ornithopter, you're getting a 2-mana 4/3 trample. So, that should just always be good. Dreadfang, loathed by fans, same mana cost, 1 red and green. Legendary creature, human warrior villain. It's a star 4 vigilance, and the power is going to be equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. So, baseline, it's 3/4 because it counts itself. A little bit easy to overlook that, I think. A 3/4 vigilance for 3, just already super solid on stats, and then it can potentially get bigger. Next, Zakao, Predation Shadow, 3 a red and a green. So 7 total mana. Legendary creature, human villain. Vigilance, trample, haste, 6/7 stats, and when it attacks, if you've cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater this turn, draw a card. I mean, if opponent doesn't remove this right away, they're probably going to lose anyway. That's a little bit trinket texty, but there you go. This is at uncommon. This is probably one of your big sort of payoffs for a big creature and for ramping into a big creature. And speaking of ramp, we've got Leyline Weaver for 1 and a Gruul hybrid, Gruul being red-green. It's a 2/2 reach. You can tap to add either red or a green. So it's your mana dork. And whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you untap it. That's going to let you sort of chain in stuff like Giant Craft Helm maybe, or the Lurking Lizards, or, you know, smaller stuff. I don't know how often you're going to be casting 2 4-drops in a turn with Leyline Weaver, but it is conceivable, right? You get 3 mana out, and I guess 6 mana out, and happen to have them in hand. A Galvanized Workforce. It's a 2/2 trample. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And does have a nice sort of, what do you call this? Mana sink. 5 and a red, put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature, activate only as a sorcery. So if you do draw it in the late game, you got plenty of mana, because this deck can generate a lot of mana. You have somewhere to put it. There's Lurking Lizards, which we just talked about, the 1/3 trample that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cast mana value 4 or greater spell. At rare, there's also Cheering Crowd, which is a little bit of a what do you call this in Commander? The I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. The kind of gift cards. What do they call that? I'm blanking on it, but you know what I'm talking about. The the stuff that helps your opponent, because at the beginning of each player's first main phase, so it means your opponent's going to benefit first. That player may put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, so you're going to get the benefit, but if they do, they add colorless for each counter on it. So if you're an opponent, do you just put the counter on it? I think you do. If you have something to play that you need 1 more mana for, you do. Otherwise, you don't, because it's a May ability. But you are obviously going to always put the counter on it. Just be aware you're ramping your opponent. Maybe in the mirror, you can play this a little more carefully. Also, rare that might pull you into this archetype, Giant Craft Helm, for 1 generic artifact equipment. Whenever a creature you control with mana value 5 or greater enters, you may attach this equipment to it. Interesting, mana value 5 or greater, when so many other things are based on 4 or greater. Equipped creature is going to get +4/+4. Cost 5 to equip it. Obviously, I guess it auto-equips to a big creature. If you jump to the end of the slide here, where there's Kazuo, Ruthless Rival, and Chizak, Apec Arachnosaur, are kind of the main ways to trigger this. Also at rare, that has relevance to this archetype here, is Lavabrink repels the Magmaloth. Chapter 1, until your next turn. This is a 4 and red saga, by the way. Until your next turn, each creature attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. So commander text there, but then chapter 2 add red, 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 red. So 3 red total. I think I said 3 reds. And then chapter 3, 5 damage to each opponent. Pretty solid. It's pretty late in the game to be ramping 3 red. So I guess play carefully depending on what you're selecting with the chapters. I'm kind of surprised they didn't give this read ahead, but there you go. Restless Razorkin is 2 in a red, 3/3 trample. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you can exile the top card of your library. If you do, you may play that card until you exile another card with this creature. So really solid 3-drop uncommon there. Human rogue villain, a Restless Razorkin. Like to see me and the professor's body type represented, in addition to, like, you know, cheerleaders and stuff in Magic. Kazuo, Ruthless Rival, 4 red, red. Legendary creature, human rogue villain. 5/5. During your turn, it has first strike. And when it enters, deals 2 damage to a target creature and 2 damage to that creature's controller. So, big body, shoots a small thing, is generally a decent card in most sets. I think it would probably be true with Kazuo. Kazuo will be at its strongest in this deck. If you've got some stuff you can trigger also as Kazuo comes down. Then there's the standard green common 6/6. In this case, it's called Chizek. Apex Arachnosaur, legendary creature, spider dinosaur hero. It has reach, it has trample, and it has ward 2. A lot of games going to be ended by Chizak in my estimation. And that was the 5 archetypes. So now let's move on to the hidden archetypes. Obviously, any set, I want to check what's the degenerate 5-color, you know, greedy, good stuff pile that you can make. In the case of this set, they've even got a signpost for it. Mythic, called Scions of the Spider. 4 a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green. And it's a 5/5. Flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, haste. Pretty good. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, other spiders you control gain flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, and haste. And as you've probably noticed, almost every creature in this set is a spider. Not everyone, but a lot of them. You won't have to try too hard to assemble a deck full of spiders. Is first strike not double strike, but you know, if you play this right before you get the trigger, it's basically an instant speed removal check. I think we'll have to see. The fixing seems okay. I don't know how much people are going to be taking fixing. Obviously, you're on a completely different game plan if you're playing Scions of the Earth Spider. You're just taking like the 2 best cards of any color in the pack. So if you pick one, pack one this, you might be able to create something quite degenerate. In terms of trying to stay open for finding this in packs 2 or 3, the deck probably not going to be as strong. But there you go. What's the kind of stuff you can play? You can play all of these rare spiders like Rizna, the spider with the Riz for 1 red. It's a 1/2. Whenever you attack with 2 or more spiders, you put a +1/+1 counter on Rizna, and when it deals 4 or more damage, you get a impulse draw. You get to exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You can play that. There's Kraza, Swarm is 1. It's a 1 in a red, rare, 2/1 Riot. Spiders you control have Riot. And what Riot means is you either, when it comes into play, you either choose to give it haste or a +1/+1 counter. Obviously, +1/+1 counter, very relevant for any modified synergies you may or may not have in your hand or in your deck. And we're not done with Kraza. Spells and abilities can't be countered. All right, it's going to turn off counter spells. And damage can't be prevented. It's also going to turn off damage prevention. I'm racking my brain for anything that prevents damage in this set. I think that's probably only constructed relevant, but there you go. There's Kraza. Alex, Mouth to Many Eyes, and I'm just pulling out for this slide, you know, stuff that especially applies to spiders, because you're kind of going to lean in heavily into spiders, like Demara, Soul of a Spider. Whenever a spider you control enters, draw a card. It's obviously ridiculous in a 5-color spider deck. Alex, Mouth to Many Eyes is 4 blue for a 4/4. You can look at the top card of your library anytime, and you can cast spider spells and non-creature spells from the top of your library. And whenever you attack, you may mill a card if you want. Guy looks like Bane. I adopted the dark. No, wait. You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it. I used to have a really good Bane impression. Obviously can't tell from that. Arachnomania. Like a riot. Oh, 3 a red and a red for an enchantment. The legend rule doesn't apply to spiders you control. Probably be the most relevant in this deck, I guess. Are you playing a 5 mana, does kind of nothing enchantment? Well, it doesn't quite do nothing. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, if you do, you may choose new targets for the copy. If you do, you may copy it. If you do, you may choose new targets for the copy. If the copy is a permanent spell, it gains haste, but only triggers once each turn. But, you know, if you've got all those, you know, it doesn't take too many turns of hitting a bunch of double spiders. Is that itself a build around? Maybe. Maybe it's kind of a fallback for your 5-color spider deck. I don't know. I think it's more of a fun card. But there you go. Arachnomania. Oris, Last of the Web Lords for 4 and a green, 3/5 reach. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target spider you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And then can target himself. So attacking as a 5/7 is not too shabby. We talked about Demera. There's Terran Tusk, Unwisely Awoken, which is a spider boar hero. When it enters, you get a food token, and it's going to buff all other spiders, most importantly, but also boars, bats, bears, birds, cats, dogs, frogs, jackals, lizards, mice, otters, rabbits, raccoons, squirrels, rats, turtles, and wolves. And they probably would have included more animals, but they ran out of space, I'm sure. I wonder if it could have just said, like, gives +1/+1 to all animal types, and then just had animal types be a batch that is defined online. I think this is, I guess this is the more elegant solution. It's Spider Ham, if you didn't realize. It's a rare. It does have the ETB make a food, but I just put it on this slide because it buffs all the spiders. That will probably incidentally buff some other things. Grow Extra Arms is a combat trick that is 1 mana cheaper if you have a spider, or if you target a spider. Not even if you have a spider, it's got to target the spider. Becomes a +4/+4 giant growth. The price of a giant growth. There's some cool things that flip into spiders. We'll talk about more of them later, but again, if you're playing the 5-color, you might end up getting past some of these 3-color mythics because people are kind of going to lane down, especially later in the draft, they'll be laying down to their guild. There's Scuttling Spider Coach for 3 mana. It's a 3/3. Trample. When this vehicle attacks or blocks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each spider you control. Would I play this in any deck? No. I will have to get beat by this card many times before I believe that a vehicle is good. I mean, theoretically, it could get quite big if you've got a lot of spiders. So if there is a deck for it, I guess this is the main one. All right, white, green, blue Legends. I think I talked a little bit about Bant. Seems a little extra supported. There's Urban Retreat. And here's Surus. Here's what it flips into. And it actually, you can either flip it, right? You can play it for 2 mana. You get an 0/1. It comes in with the 2/1 green spider creature token with reach. And then you can pay the 4 mana to transform it as a sorcery. Or you can just hard cast it for that 1, a green, a white, and a blue. And then you get a 4/4 Vigilance Reach, legendary creature, spider, human, hero. Each legendary spell you cast that's 1 or more colors has Enweb green, white, blue. And obviously if you cast this, you already have green, white, blue. So you can bounce this back, I guess, and replay and get your 2/1 spider. You probably want to try to Enweb something else that you've already played. I mean, 4/4 Vigilance Reach. I don't know. Now, there are some other sort of payoffs for legendary stuff. Druneth's Receiver of the Hive is another rare kind of build-aroundy card. It's a 1/1 trample. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value equal to Druneth's power, copy that spell, except the copy isn't legendary, and you put a +1/+1 counter on Druneth. Magical Christmas Land, turn 3, you play a 1 and a 2-drop. Druneth is now up to a 3/3. The next turn you play a 3-drop, and you've created copies of all those, and you just win the game. In reality, these kind of cards are usually very hard to trigger. I'm going to be pretty low on Druneth until proven otherwise. I'd be pretty high, as we talked about, on MacD, Demera. There's lots of... Oh, I put Druneth on here twice. I guess to just emphasize how bad it was. There's Fearsome Ridgeline, which cares about legends. And Lost in Lityara, which is another saga here, rare, for 3 and a blue. Chapter 1 is Surveil 3, so you're going to have a deck where you can afford to take turn 4 off to Surveil 3. Now, most cases, Surveil 3 is going to be equivalent to drawing about 1.5 cards, Maybe it's almost like draw a card. And then Chapter 2, when you next cast a creature spell this turn, copy it, except the copy isn't legendary. So, again, if the right deck, if you got a lot of Spider Legends, you've got that. And then Chapter 3, choose a card name. Whenever a creature with the chosen name deals combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card. Again, Magical Christmas Land, your opponents have no interaction. They have no way to block whatever you copied. You're getting in, you're drawing 2 cards. And it is potentially a win the game card at its ceiling. It also has a pretty low floor, but that's Lost in Lityara. Another saga that we kind of talked about already, Most Helpful Weaver, can turn something into a legendary. And then there's Imposter Syndrome, which whenever a non-token creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary. So, really looking out for not learning the legend rule. You can, in terms of what is a good legend to copy, Chizak, getting double Chizaks with your Imposter Syndrome, cheating them out for 3 mana with Cirrus. That's the blue, green, white Bant Legends deck as I see it. I don't think it's really something you steer towards, but if you fall into it, that could be pretty fun. Similar thing with Gobin Gene Splicing Savant, which on the other side is Fleam Gobin's Creation. So Gobin is a 1 and a blue, can't be blocked, human scientist villain, legendary creature, obviously. And when it deals combat damage to a player, it's going to connive. Those counters are going to stay on it, right? If you pay the 1, a blue, a black, and a red to transform it. And you activate that only as a sorcery. And then once you're on the Fleam side, and Fleam has been the meme that just won't quit. It's so funny. Wizards tried so hard to make loot a thing, and then they just do this sort of card, possibly with slush art that, was not even art that was specifically commissioned for this, because there's a bit of theory that a lot of the art in Through the Omenpaths is just stuff that wasn't used in previous sets. But in any case, Fleam. Everybody loves this little guy. 3/3 Flying Menace. Spells you cast from your graveyard cost 2 less to cast. And we've seen there's a little bit of things you can do with that. And then each non-land card in your graveyard has Mayhem. So, again, you're going to have discarded it that turn, but it's got the Mayhem, and the Mayhem cost is equal to its mana cost. So, if you can arrange it right, you can get some card advantage with the, blue-black Connive kind of stuff. Other stuff I haven't highlighted yet. Vazin, Two-Faced Trickster for 3 and a blue. Enters as a copy of a creature you control, except it's Vazin, Two-Faced Trickster. So it can legend rule itself, but not legend rule the thing it copies. It has Mayhem for 2 and a blue. So you'll be able to, if you happen to have Fleam going on, you can just, for a single blue mana, you can copy Fleam. And who wouldn't want to have an army of Fleams, honestly? Aggressive Symbiosis, you can play from the graveyard. Not that great. It's a 1 and a black enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has +1/+1 and menace. Is a symbiote in addition to its other types. Not relevant. It's just flavor for, what is that? Is it for Venom or is it for Morbius? Spiderheads, let me know. You may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs. But it only costs 1 black if you've already got the Fleam flipped. Fleam flipped, say that fast. Say that 5 times fast. Fleam flipped. Clandestine work for 2 and black is your standard sorcery. Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. In this case, you get a Surveil 2 tacked onto it, which can be good. Because, you can surveil something into the graveyard and all of a sudden it has Mayhem. Well, but then I guess if you're surveilled, Mayhem is not triggered. I don't believe Mayhem is triggered. White, blue, red, play from exile. There's Nia, Skysail Storyteller for generic and a red. Enters exile the top card of your library. You can play that card for as long as you control Nia. And then for 2, a blue, a red, and a white, you can transform, or you can just cast the other side, which is enabled Nia, Fabled Sky Climber. Legendary creature, spider, human, hero, flying, vigilance, haste. Whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, put a +1/+1 counter on Nia. And then remove 2 counters from Nia. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So your standard commander design, where it is both the enabler and the payoff. But not a bad payoff. Playing stuff from exile to put +1/+1 counters on a flying, vigilance, haste creature. Restless Razorkin will let you exile stuff. Arachnomania, we talked about, is a payoff for playing spells from anywhere other than your hand, which would include exile. Rizna the Spider Crown will let you exile stuff. Quint's Insight, you can discard, draw, and I guess because you're... Well, that's playing from... Yeah, whenever you play a land or cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, it's dealing 1 damage to each opponent. It's a small payoff, but it would add up in a deck where you already are getting nice card advantage every time you play from exile or do a Mayhem thing, or even Enweb. I'm not sure why I put Enweb. Is there a put into play? Well, anyways. Orala Hedron Scalar lets you... Well, I guess you're not playing that from your graveyard. I don't know what I was doing on this slide. I think I might have gotten confused. But anyways, there's blue, white, red kind of stuff you can do. Firebrain Scheme. It's 1 red. It's a sorcery. Choose one. One of the options is exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You can play, or you choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You can play that card, or it can give 1 or 2 target creatures each +1/+0 on first strike. Kumanosu the Watchful, 4/4 vigilance. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, yeah, I guess just showing you can play a range of stuff once you get into 3. Because you can kind of cross... well, you don't really cross guilds. There is actually an Is It card, even though there isn't an Is It deck, or is there? And here's yet another mythic with the 3 colors. Transform Kren, Undercity Dreamer for 1 and a green to get a 1/2, but it comes in, puts a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, which could include itself. So pretty strong value there. You're definitely going to want to play that side if at all, unless you really need to get to the 4/3 first strike haste side for 6 mana. For 2, you put a +1/+1 counter on Kren. He gains hexproof and becomes colorless until end of turn. And then whenever you attack, double the number of each kind of counter on each spider and legendary creature you control. So pretty crazy, pretty good in that 5-color spider deck, obviously. I mean, just the 2, so you have to get to 8 mana to hold up give it hexproof. But then once you're untapped, this card is just ridiculous. So I'd be pretty high picking Kren. And you're not going to have a problem finding, because remember, red and green are the easiest ways to find fixing, including Eccentric Arachnologist, which is a 3-mana 2/3 that has tap to add 1 mana of any color. And 2 a green and tap, put a +1/+1 counter on target spider, which is not bad if you want to double the number of each kind of counter on each spider. Costume Closet can put +1/+1 counters. Generous Bettery Ray can put +1/+1 counters. Gloria the Great Armorer can put +1/+1 counters on an attacking creature. And whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library, and you can play that this turn. You know, that should have been on the exile slide. We got the Riz. Riz and the Spider Crowned. The magic card with the most Riz. That gives +1/+1 counters. Physic, Ethereum Mechanic. I don't think we've seen this one yet. So 3 generic, 2/3 vigilance. Taps to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact, creature, and or vehicle you control. And then 2, remove 2 +1/+1 counters from among artifacts you control. Draw a card. I guess you'll probably use that if your stuff is going to go to the graveyard anyway. Kind of a big expense if you're usually going to need those +1/+1 counters on your stuff, either to win the game with attacks or to be blocking with it. Still, you play Physic in pretty much any deck. Perfected Pastry we talked about, puts +1/+1 counters. Alesso Suppress puts +1/+1 counters. Yeah, you can do +1/+1 counter modified shenanigans in white, red, and green. And speaking of Izzet, not too long ago, we were Uharis the Storm Spinner. You might see this in your pick one, pack one, and go, okay, is there a deck in red and blue built around Uharis? You can't cast it during your first, second, or third turns of the game. It's a 2/3 double strike vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, if you played a land or cast a spell this turn from anywhere other than your hand, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So pretty strong. Again, all those usual suspects of cards cast from other than hand. Seems like it should be doable. I even put Kivney on here, right? There's Mayhem cards you might not be able to cast except for Mayhem. But I'm guessing Mayhem seems pretty well supported, so there's that. There is an Orzhov Mythic and an Orzhov Rare with our Cocoon Keeper and Corneous Horizon Splicer. However, I don't really feel like there's a great deck built around these. I could be wrong. Withar is a 5/5 Vigilance lifelink for 7 mana. When it enters, you exchange life totals with an opponent. And if you lost life, you get to draw that many cards. So, kind of a win more kind of thing. I wouldn't want to lose too much life with it, because you kind of would just rather win the game. I guess it is a May exchange life totals. And then Quonius, 3 a white and a black legendary creature, human, scientist, villain. When it enters, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent and 1 target non-land permanent card from a graveyard. And when it dies, put the exiled cards into their owner's hand. So usually you'd exile something from your graveyard, so you're going to get a payoff, at least if opponent's thing gets, they get their thing back in their hand, not even into play, and you'll get a thing back. So Quoni is very solid if you can splash it, and it seems very splashable, but in terms of building around it with Orzhov, you absolutely could, but it doesn't seem like there's a particular synergy advantage to doing so. On the other hand, mono white, we have this mythic that is 5 white pips called Verlax the Haven Skin, Symbiote Hero. When it enters, if it was cast, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So already 5/5 reanimates something, which will be trivial if you are mono white. It will be not trivial if you are not. And if damage would be dealt to Verlax, prevent that damage, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So if you somehow haven't won the game based just on the slam dunk value there, there's also the simple fact that this is just an absolute beast to tangle with. You have Chosen by Valgavoth as a rare that's going to give, it's an enchant creature, it's an aura, and give +2/+2 for each aura and equipment attached to the creature that it's attached to. So baseline +2/+2. And then all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to enchanted creature instead. Obviously, if you could get it chosen by Valgavoth on Verilax, that's just super hilarious. So then when your opponent is damaging you, it's damaging Verilax, which is actually growing the Verilax. Opponent will be in a real tough spot if they don't have removal, which if they do have removal, they will be in a not very tough spot at all. And then mono white, there's two of these hybrid commons, Gallant Citizen and Wonderweave Aerialist, seem really nicely, costed for a mono white deck that's always going to be able to play them on curve. So I do think there is some kind of mono white thing possible. Mono blue, Bellion the Parched is a blue 2/2. Whenever you cast a blue spell, if it's a creature, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So kind of a prowessy thing. Really wants you to be heavy blue. And then at the beginning of your end step, you untap it, and it turns into a land that taps to add blue. So it also kind of ramps you, or lets you hold up counter spells like Drix Interception, or, ramp into draw 2 cards from Pinnacle Research Team. Or there is even an Enweb counterspell, detect intrusion, counter target instant sorcery or triggered ability. So if you want to play mono blue control, look out for Bellion the Parched. All right, so we have now seen interesting that the 73 these were all lined up, by the way. Not sure what happened there. We have 113 creatures in the set, plus there's a decent amount of tokens, as we've seen. So how does that break down? Well, in terms of how I count it, there are 21 creatures with 1 toughness, or about 19% of the creatures. And I'm saying about because there's stuff that comes down, puts a +1/+1 counter. The one guy that definitely puts the +1/+1 counter on himself, I'm counting as 2 toughness. So 1/1 that puts the +1/+1 counter on himself. So add another 24 creatures for 2 toughness. So if something's dealing 2 damage or giving -2 toughness, that's going to eliminate 40% of your creatures. By the time you get up to 3 toughness, you're at 73% of creatures. So you're adding another 38 creatures. Plus, there is a rare that creates 3/3 illusion villain tokens, as we saw. 4 toughness. So once you're dealing 4 damage with a spell, you can remove 89% of creatures. Again, a lot of +1/+1 counters, though, so things will be moving up this, this chart, this scale very rapidly. Only 2 creatures with 5 toughness, so really marginal difference between 4 and 5 toughness based removal spells or creature power. And then at 6 or more toughness, we have 4 creatures to get the whole 100%. This is just use this as rough. There's a creature that's black, and X that's giving itself +1/+1 counters depending on how much you spend on it. But just to kind of give you an idea as we talk about the removal on the set. So what do we have in white? Well, first of all, the one thing I want to say about the removal on the set is it seems light. It seems like a lot fewer removal spells than your average set. Maybe not, I won't say a lot, but like white should probably have 4 or 5 removal spells. Now you do get Sudden Strike, destroy target attacking and blocking creature. That's pretty solid. Mothwing Shroud is your standard O-Ring effect. Enters exile target non-land permanent. And then at common you have Spectacular Tactics, which is pretty nice given the hexproof and a +1/+1 counter, which is good for the modified decks. And has the other mode of destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. And that cheerleader must have something pretty amazing under that skirt. Look at what the cause. It's really blowing those guys up. All right. So I think removal is going to be super high picks. You're going to be able to get powerful legendary spiders throughout the draft. But removal, especially in white and blue here, blue also only has 3 things I'm counting as removal. One is to turn something into a citizen, 1/1. Defender loses all abilities, so it can't even attack as a 1/1. I'm not sure how relevant that is. I'd probably just rather have turn it into a legitimate business person for 1 mana. But yeah, you know, there is the thing of like you attack in with one of your 1/1 citizens and they block with their big thing, and then you play this after combat and turn that thing into a 1/1, and this becomes a removal spell. I think it's essentially removal for most things. There's annoyingly enough Enweb and things to bounce or blink that it still has all the problems of the aura-based removal. Other than counter spells, you're really talking about Snatchback, which is really good. It's the, you know, Royal Eruption or whatever. It's 1 and a blue with a kicker for 1 and a blue. Return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If it's kicked, you draw a card. And then we have a legendary version of the, what's the jellyfish? The 2/2 jellyfish that bounces up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. In this case, it's Arguer, Title Spinner, legendary creature, Spider Avatar Hero. I think you'll basically play as many of these as you can get your hands on. And because that traditionally the 2/2 that bounces something is very strong and limited. So yeah, but you're pretty limited. There's not even like a freeze down spell. At least there wasn't one that I found. I might have missed it somehow. Now coming into black, it's looking a little better, but keep in mind the House Grows Hungry is a rare. So really at common and uncommon, you've got Knife Trick, which I believe is Pumpkin Bombs or something in Spider-Man terms. It's really a 3-mana spell because you have to either discard a card or pay 2, but in the Mayhem decks, discarding a card is not necessarily a cost. But yeah, so 1 mana sorcery deals 3 damage to target creature is pretty good. 3 mana sorcery deals 3 damage to target creature is not so great. On the other hand, we saw the 3 damage or -3/-3 in the case of Scorpion Sting at instant. That's going to remove a healthy 70+% of the field. So for 2 or 3 mana, you're probably not too unhappy to run either of these. Remorseless Coup at 2 and a black for instant. Put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. You lose 2 life unless you control a villain. So this is your murder spell, but you lose 2 life unless you control a villain, which won't be too hard in black. So I think a lot of times you'll not be losing 2 life. And if you're firing it off, you probably don't mind the 2 life. You're probably removing something that you'd be happy to pay 2 life for. House Grows Hungry is a rare saga. The first chapter is destroy target creature. Then blah, blah, blah. Chapter 2, each player may discard a card. Each player who doesn't loses 3 life. So keep that in mind. You might prefer to have Remorseless Coup in a lot of cases. Be instant speed and only lose 2 life. Chapter 3, exile any number of target players' graveyards. I mean, you play that. That's just good value. There's Miasmic Mist for 1, a black and a black. It's a sorcery, but you can Mayhem it for 3 and a black if you somehow are kind of being more splashy with it. It's going to give all creatures -2/-2 until end of turn. But if you played the Mayhem version, creatures are going to get it's just going to get creatures your opponents control -2/-2 until end of turn. And just to remind ourselves on the toughness breaks, we'll just jump back. So that's 40%. Obviously, turn 4, most of the creatures your opponent will probably have some creatures out that is not hit by this. So I'm pretty low on Miasmic Mist. I don't know why they keep printing these cards. They just generally don't do enough. I guess they keep some kind of weird aggro decks in check, but nobody wants to play them. So, anyways. And then your 5 mana sorcery speed removal. It's actually 3 mana if you control a villain. Destroy target creature, gain 2 life. Damning Caress is its name. Got some nice vampire flavor there with who is that? Biting the neck. Kind of looks like what's that actress's name? Removal in red. Much better, although you can see I'm kind of taking a broader definition of removal here. We got Shock, which probably needs no explanation, deals 2 damage instant speed. Knife Trick, which we talked about. Rhino's Rampage, which is shared with green. It's your kind of fight spell. It's a sorcery speed, gives +1/+0. If there's excess damage, you can destroy up to one target non-creature artifact with mana value 3 or less, which is a pretty nice upside. I think will be relevant a lot of times, and maybe also, depending on how popular this is as a removal spell, make some of those smaller artifacts less playable. There's Deathflame Burst, which is the deal 4 for sorcery speed at 3, but you can Mayhem it for 2. Red-black decks will really love this. I think any deck will play it, as we saw, removing 70+% of the creatures, even for 3 mana sorcery speed. And there's some creatures that just take over the game, including some rares with 4 or less toughness that you'll be happy to have it. Wisecrack, also for 2 and a red, is an instant speed removal. This one at uncommon. Target creature deals damage equal to its power to itself. If that creature is attacking, it deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. This seems really pretty good. I mean, most creatures you're going to want to play are going to have more power than toughness or equal or symmetrical, you know? So, really like Wisecrack. Any deck can play Temple Trap. I guess we'll talk about that in a second. But in a red deck, you can also pay 1 in a red, discard it to destroy target artifact. And we also talked about Kazuo, 6 mana to remove something with 2 toughness or less. I'm including it on here, but I wouldn't really, if I was trying to count my removal or draft towards removal, I wouldn't really count Kazuo. But just putting it down there so you're aware, if you're thinking about picking up a creature that has 2 toughness and you know your opponent has Kazuos. In green, Rhino's Rampage is the hybrid there. Scout the City can destroy a creature with flying. It also has a mill 3, gain 3 life. And put a permanent from among the milled cards into your hand. A kind of standard green effect in most sets these days. Perilous Lunge puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control and fight. It fights. It's not a May. It fights target creature an opponent controls. That's for 2 and a green. Really not where you want to be usually with the fight spell. I mean, I guess obviously instant speed is better, way better. There is no instant speed fight spell. There is this terrific team up, which is a punch spell at instant speed for 3 and a green. It costs 2 less to cast if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater, and 1 or 2 target creatures you control each get +1/+0, and each deal damage equal to their power to target creature and opponent controls. That's probably your green premium removal. There's also at rare a 3 and a green saga called A Trail of Teacups, where you can mill 5 when you do. Saga deals damage equal to the greatest power among creature cards. Deals damage equal to the greatest power among creature cards in your graveyard to target creature. And I mean, it is milling 5, so there's a chance you'll hit something. You probably don't want to play it unless you've got something big in your graveyard already. Not sure about that. Chapter 2 is target creature gets +2/+2, and Chapter 3 is return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. There's also Selesnya Archivist for 3 and a green. 3/3 human citizen. When it enters, you can either return target creature card with mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard to your hand, or exile target artifact or enchantment. There's a fair amount of artifacts and enchantments running around. So I think most green decks would probably play this. 3/3 brings up something back from your graveyard. It would have to be mana value 4 or greater, though. I don't know. I'm a bit torn on that one. And then colorless removal. Any deck can play Temple Trap, so everybody gets access to the deal 5. As we saw, 5 damage is going to remove a lot of things, almost all the things, just at their baseline stats anyway. So I think this is actually going to be more playable than probably people think. This is like, you know, every color getting access to red's deal 5, and then if you somehow can splash a red, you've got a little bit of artifact hate. in addition, but you don't necessarily have to have that. That is Through the Omenpaths. If you watch this far, consider subscribing. I don't do this every set anymore because it's just a stupid amount of work. I've spent like 3 days of my life putting together this slideshow, and last time I did it, not too many people watched. But I guess you are my target audience. If you've watched this far, leave a comment. Let me know. What do you think about Universes Within or Universes Beyond? Which version or both versions? What are you going to be playing? And every once in a while, I would show up on Twitch. So in the event that I do in the future, you can follow me there. Twitch.tv/ManaDadMTG. This has been ManaDad, broadcasting from the attic filled with Lego boxes and magic cards, reminding you Magic is a game so fun, even Dads can enjoy it. Adios.